scared that Eric Greitens actually does still have the political kind of clout in Missouri. For whatever reason, he actually does have support here. And for people who aren't familiar, Gavin and I record out of Kansas City, so we're pretty plugged into Missouri politics. Are you unnerved by this? Or are you hoping that it has kind of like a Chris Kobach effect? Like, you think that it'll just give away the Senate race?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely unnerving, the fact that this guy is once again, this close to becoming someone in power. He should not be in power. He's an odious right winger. And I certainly think it's going to depend on who the Republicans put up and who the Democrats put up to try to stop him, because it's going to take someone with at least an ounce of charisma to beat Greitens, just given the fact that he has the name recognition of being the former governor, again, completely regardless of the scandal, which many people, frankly, have probably, kind of forgotten now. It's been such an insane year or two. He might just be able to, have the most name recognition and take the, Republican primary by storm, just by that virtue. Now, again, we have yet to see who else is really going to jump in this race. There's been a few declared candidates, but so far, no one quite with the gravitas.
Recognition.
Yeah, exactly. And on the Democratic side, Jason Kander, who was kind of considered by a lot of local Democrats to be like, their rising star or whatever, at one point even was speculated to have presidential ambitions, has declared that he will not run for the seat. Unequivocally not interested in becoming a senator. So that's a development. And so far the Democrats, frankly, have yet to really put up anyone very inspiring, or no Democrat that's very inspiring has yet to announce their intentions. So right now this really is looking like
Claire's going to get back in the ring, Gavin.
She also unequivocally said that she will not be running for this seat.
I didn't see that, but that makes sense.
Yeah. And don't worry, we just got started, so no worries. But yeah, welcome everyone to the stream. Anyway, yeah, this is certainly an interesting story. And speaking of Jason Kander, actually, he put out this statement this morning, which I thought was interesting. I didn't actually know this. Kander says that I once knew Eric Greitens. He was a veterans advocate then. In 2015, as Missouri was transforming politically, Eric went from ultra liberal Dem to ultra conservative Republican. It seems the only belief he actually holds is that the ends always justify the means, which came as a little bit of a surprise to me. I never figured that Greitens dabbled in, like being a liberal or a Democrat. He always seemed like such a staunch, like hardcore right winger. It's really just indicative of how much grifting goes on too in politics, people just changing their entire political identities overnight, seemingly to adjust to the times, and quite successfully. I mean, like I said, Eric Greitens really fit the bill as a staunch conservative kind of Missouri Republican. So it's interesting that he made that transition, and now he even has a YouTube show where you can go to find just total crazy right-wing stuff, stop the steal kind of shit.
Steve Bannon.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, this guy is not just some tame, GOP, whatever. He's pretty crazy. He's pretty radical. So it's interesting to see that he's entered this race. It'll be interesting to see if he's endorsed by Trump, if he gets that endorsement from Trump, or who Trump ends up endorsing. And I certainly imagine that Greitens will be groveling for that fucking endorsement. I'm sure he's already gone down to Mar-a-Lago a couple of times.
Well, yeah, and what's interesting about Greitens, one, I mean, I guess I wasn't like terribly plugged into Missouri politics back in 2015 at the time that Jason Kander would be referencing. I don't ever remember a time where I would have ever known the name Eric Greitens and liberal next to it, but perhaps that is the case. But he's like I said, this kind of like terribleness is twofold. So, we can talk about his policy, just is absolutely abysmal. I'll give you guys a quick example. Kansas City tried to raise the minimum wage, I believe in 2016. Greitens then, when he was governor, blocked the minimum wage increase in Missouri, saying it was against the Missouri Constitution to have a city with a higher minimum wage than Missouri's state minimum wage, which was the federal minimum, $7.25. So you can imagine trying to get by in any city in America on that income. It's absolutely impossible. So then on top of his, ultra conservative, governorship, You have the fact that he blackmailed this woman with like sexual images, compromising photographs, that kind of thing. Yeah, naked and blindfolded, coerced her into performing oral sex. Like,
yeah. This guy's like a straight up like psychopath.
He has a mugshot.
Yeah, straight up. And he was so crazy, and the scandal was so insane that even Josh Hawley, who at the time was not even a senator, if I'm correct, he even had to weigh in.
Yet.
Yeah, he even weighed in and was ultimately somewhat instrumental in getting Greitens out, or pressuring him out. So that's even interesting that Greitens was too far for even someone like Josh Hawley, who of course has now developed a reputation as an insidious Republican in his own right. So it would really be, I guess, it would really be unfortunate, but I guess in some ways fitting if Greitens and Hawley end up being the two senatorial representatives from the great state of Missouri. Definitely not, a very impressive state of affairs here in our home state, but yeah,
I mean, I guess it's what's even more problematic to this and indicative of the general issue we're having right now is in a place like Missouri, the heartland America, right, where a lot of these key leftist battles should be being fought, guys. Let's be clear about this. Obviously Gavin and I, we know that all the struggles that are happening in the cities, those are important. I'm not trying to undermine them, but a lot of those people are already on and in common cause with us, at least as far as broad voting goes. And obviously electoral structural reform is a necessity, but if we're interested in winning and getting change now in any kind of electoral capacity, we have to be persuading voters where they have what would be just a power ballot. There's a power imbalance in the voting system, and we understand this in this country, right? Thanks to things like the Electoral College and the fact that these sparsely populated states, including ones like Missouri, have the same number of senators as densely populated states like California, New York, right? But because of that, in the way that these structural power imbalance are rooted in our society, we need to be having our leftist arguments on the battleground in the heartland America, right? And we need to be coming after these people and saying, hey, are you a farmer? Because Greitens is not going to represent you against big agriculture, right? Hey, in this pandemic, were you worried about being able to get to a hospital that could take care of you or your loved ones? And guess what? When Governor Greitens was I guess when he was governor of Missouri, I mean, that was not a priority of him, right? I mean, he was
exactly.
Not nearly as bad as Brownback as far as austerity goes, I guess, but and that was almost like the scapegoat, right? As it wasn't as bad as Brownback next door,
right?
For Greitens when he was governor of Missouri, but he was still like extreme austerity, extreme hardcore conservative Republican.
Yeah, exactly. And it really is infuriating, like you said, that, the Democratic Party, or really no one seemingly on the left, is taking this opportunity to declare candidacy and try to run a populist left campaign in the Midwest and prove that some of these values will really fly electorally. I'm reminded of Claire Mccaskill's race, who we referenced earlier. She ran a really pathetic campaign, tried to play this whole bipartisan shtick by not actually appealing to real bipartisan issues like legalizing cannabis, which won in Missouri that year on the ballot in 2018 for medical legalization with a over 60%, I believe. She didn't talk about that ever, but she talked about how she agreed with Trump on his immigration policies, as if she was going to out xenophobia, her opponent, right? Like
Josh Hawley.
That's not really the way to appeal as a Democrat. If anything, you want to lean into the more, populist issues. And in a state like Missouri, there's a great case to be made for the agricultural, farming, section of the economy, for hemp, for cannabis. That would bring a lot of tax money into a state that really needs tax money. Even here in Kansas City, the infrastructure, transportation infrastructure needs money. There's potholes, there's it needs funds. So
the fucking infrastructure in Missouri, Kansas City is fucking egregious, guys.
And same with St. Louis. Again, the state really does need some money, and there could be a populist case for, again, things like bringing tax revenue into the state through legalization, which luckily seems to be happening. We're going to be voting on it next in 2022 recreationally, and it's already legal medicinally here. But the point is that they could be bringing that issue to the forefront of their campaign as a Democrat. Also in 2018, Missouri voted to increase our minimum wage. something that apparently Joe Biden is still not caught up with, despite the fact that it was in the Democratic Party platform. So again, there are
that's actually something. There's a scoop on that actually that I did want to touch on because you brought that up. I was actually listening to. So my girlfriend's a local reporter in Kansas City, and she was actually sitting in on a conference today. They're actually trying to roll back the minimum wage increase in the state of Missouri as we speak, which is just think about that in the middle of a pandemic when it's overwhelmingly popular to have this $15 minimum wage increase at the federal level, which was just abdicated on. Now we have states following Joe Biden's permission. Now he's not going to fight for the minimum wage, so he can't even make a show of these states rolling back on their minimum wage
and that's another
policies.
thing and that's another thing that a Democrat or an actual leftist could point to as proof that why Republicans just sell out the voters, and when they're in power they're not actually going to help out the working.
Oh yeah, I should clarify. This is fucking Republic. I mean, Missouri is controlled by Republicans right now. Yeah,
completely controlled by Republicans. And the Democrats should be pointing at that and saying, why are you going to elect someone to the Senate who's in cohorts with these same people that are trying to fuck over the minimum wage that was democratically voted on in the midterms? Again, it was a ballot measure to raise the minimum wage, and it was voted on resoundingly. Same with legalizing cannabis, and even one other ballot measure that I can't remember right now that was surprisingly kind of leftist in nature, that again was resoundingly voted on by Missourians. So it's again one of these issues.
You know what it was? It was the right to work is what they always vote on.
Yeah, that's true, and you're right, exactly right. And it's really proof that when you do present issues to voters, even in a state like Missouri, and you remove any partisan labels or frills, people do tend to vote for the common sense, more populist, economic, labor-oriented policy. It's just that it's a branding issue ultimately, and especially in a state like Missouri, obviously they run ads against Democrats and use all kinds of ridiculous smears, and a lot of Democrats live up to those smears. Don't get me wrong, most of them are absolutely terrible here. So.
Yeah. And just to kind of go back to the right to work issue, because I actually heard Thomas Frank make an interesting point about this. I can't remember where he was, probably on Katie Halper's live stream or something. But he was talking about how, he was even speculating that had a term like right to work, something smart like that, which sounds like it could be beneficial to workers, right? That's the whole point of a slogan like right to work. So really what right to work means, it's like right to work for less is what everybody always says, or right to work wrong for whatever state you're in. And here you see like union guys with shirts that say like right to work wrong for Missouri, or people have that on their trucks and shit. It's a union thing, but that is dying, right? So it's very rare that you see people that understand that whole right to work dynamic, and that's because most states have adopted it, right? And even Josh Hawley, the fake populist fuck, he was running a pro right to work, which is just fucking horseshit, right? But anyway, he was expressing the concern that I think is actually kind of fair, which is that he didn't know if there was the union infrastructure in this country right now to be able to relay the messaging that something like right to work was horseshit, and it was actually going to be hurtful to the unions, because it's so easy for them to be drowned out by corporate media. And if CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News all start parroting the same line, it's very difficult for unions or even independent media, frankly, to break that line in the broad public's mind.
Yeah, exactly. So again, if anyone's just tuning in, Eric Greitens has announced his candidacy for the Senate seat that's being vacated by Roy Blunt in 2022. Again, that'll put him probably right now as the leading contender for the Republican nomination for the governor or for Senate to represent Missouri and Washington. Like I said earlier, it'll be really interesting if any other charismatic or commanding enough presence on the Republican or Democratic side will be able to outdo this guy, just because he does have more name recognition than them. And it looks like here, according to this Politico article, that exactly what we were talking about is already coming to fruition, where Republicans are alarmed that he could put this otherwise safe Republican seat in jeopardy if he wins a crowded and split primary. So again, exactly what we saw with Chris Kobach, who lost the governorship of Kansas to a Democrat in Laura Kelly. That could very well happen here, because again, Greitens just has so much baggage, so much scandals and stuff to dredge up and point to. I forget who it was, but there's another senator that basically the reason why Claire Mccaskill got in the Senate at all, if I'm correct, or maybe it was the reason why she won re-election. I don't remember which year, but one of her opponents was just this like horrifically terrible conservative guy that said rape could not result in a legitimate baby because God would not will it.
Oh yeah.
And it was so disgusting and so offensive that even, it was too much for even Missouri Republicans, and Claire Mccaskill ended up beating that guy. So again, this kind of effect does happen where, even Missourians will tolerate a lot of craziness, but, to some extent there is a line. And, the Republican Party is worried that Greitens could win in a Republican primary, but maybe not in a statewide election, especially against a more commanding Democratic opponent. So it'll be interesting to see how this.
The trouble is that I don't know if there will be a commanding Democratic opponent, right? Like, you and I live in Missouri, and I didn't recognize a single goddamn name off of that list of potential of people who had announced to run as Democrats, right? So not a lot of star power coming out of the woodwork for the Democratic Party, but we'll see. Who knows? Maybe a third party candidate will excite us.
Or an independent. Yeah, an independent. Yeah. I don't know why that couldn't happen. Again, Missouri is a state that would seem red, but on ballot measure issues, voters have proven that they are independent minded and they don't just toe the, economically libertarian deficit.
It could be like a Minnesota effect.
That's what I mean.
Minnesota,
yeah. If someone ran on a strong union populist farming platform, it's very, very possible. So we'll be interested to see how this race shapes out, and we will keep you guys updated. I'm still, I guess, kind of holding out hope that like someone interesting jumps in the race, but who knows, someone like a big name like Cori Bush or something, just to make this an interesting, exciting race. But so far, it doesn't really seem like anyone that I'm excited about has any real intention. So we'll see. Who knows? There's always the possibility that some unknown will pop up, and wouldn't it be great if just a working person or something like that were to jump in this race and make a commanding splash? That'd be the kind of thing that we need. And who's to say it won't happen? So we'll keep.
If you're out there,
hit
up the Vanguard.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully we will have some of these candidates on the race again, since we are in Kansas City currently. It's nice to do a bit of a local Midwestern spotlight, especially because the rest of the mainstream press, or the rest of the press, we're not mainstream. The rest of the press completely ignores this part of the country. So we do like to give a spotlight to the Heartland and the Midwest and all that. So yeah, we'll keep you guys updated on that. Similarly, in Senate news, this was a story that broke a few days ago that we were going to talk about but completely forgot to, and that's the candidacy of the hillbilly elegy dude, J.D. Vance.
Yeah. This is really, really interesting to me because I've only tangentially been heard, or I guess through the grapevine about hillbilly elegy, but my sister read it and it blew my fucking mind, because apparently the same part of Kentucky, in all of those traditions that this dude's writing about in hillbilly elegy, is exactly where my whole fucking family comes from, and I had no idea that it was all of these Appalachia Kentucky shit. It's that's my whole family. I think I told you this, Gavin, when I was a kid growing up, my grandparents had me call them Momo and Popo, and I thought it was the lamest thing ever, and I was like, oh my god, I can't tell anybody about this. And now and then in that book you find people are like, oh no, this is a fucking common thing in Appalachian culture, and you're like, that's weird and interesting, because I've never thought about myself that comes from a culture. I've always just described myself as a mutt, right? Like the rest of America, we're just Wonder Bread, right? There's no culture that created Wonder Bread. It's just fucking late stage capitalism. But but I just think it's interesting. Writes book, becomes superstar. I don't know, Netflix makes a movie about it, and now you're gonna become a senator. Does that just seem kind of narrative?
Yeah. And from what I've heard, the book kind of has it definitely kind of is this capitalist fantasy of pulling yourself up by the bootstraps, the kind of thing that's heavily promoted by a capitalist society to kind of convince all the masses that they're only one lottery ticket away from ascending to the Senate or whatever the fuck from their hodunk trailer park home, or it just has that vibe for sure. And not that hardworking poor people don't genuinely work their asses off and rise up the ranks. That obviously does happen, but ultimately a meritocracy just by design leaves out way too many people for it to be a humane system or way to structure a developed civilization. So a kind of implicit endorsement of a meritocratic rise or ascension to power is not something that really sits right with me. And I feel books that kind of tell that story as if it's inspiring without putting a real spotlight on the systemic failures that leave so many people falling through the cracks and leave so many families living paycheck to paycheck, for example. That does kind of not sit well with me. So I'm definitely sus on this guy, and I'm interested to see what kind of policies he really embraces if he actually runs for the Senate. Because, I'm not trying to like completely shit on the guy. I don't know that much about him. And if he does if he runs on a serious populist platform and, supports universal health care and says, my family really could have benefited from a $25 wage or whatever and strong unions and all that stuff, then I'll get behind him.
Something tells me that's not what the Protect Ohio Value Super PAC is buying from this guy, though. That's what I'm saying, right? Like, that's what I'm saying. So here we have like this perfect narrative story for this guy to be my family comes from hardship, but now I've got like a $10 million contribution from Peter Thiel, and I'm going to tell everybody, and I'm going to give this like whitewash version of what it's like living in Appalachia. And now we can continue to be like, oh, if only we went back in time to when like these like poor people had at least like one lip above poverty, and all these other things, but we're still struggling in the United. I don't know. It's like a fantasy kind of revert back to an old time that didn't exist. And of course, these people are really experiencing pain, right? Like when we come out, like when I say that, I'm not trying to like negate any of the real pain and suffering and just total despair that is overwhelming in places like Appalachia, in places like Ohio and in Kentucky and wherever the fuck else, all across this country. But what I do take issue with is this you're now selling a false hope to those people, and you're selling them a fantasy of the past that it used to be brighter back in the day. And now exactly. Last year, I
didn't even know
anybody that's I didn't know about that, but anyway,
was he
for
trying
people
to,
who are just listening, Gavin's discovering that Peter Thiel hella supported Chris Kobach in the primary.
Was that in hopes that he would win the Republican nomination so that then the seat would go to Democrats? Or was it
Peter Thiel is like an anarcho-capitalist, like he's like a hardcore Trump supporter. Like you can read the whole Vox article about supporting Chris Kobach. That's actually a decent piece by Vox.
Interesting. That's really fascinating. The fact that I didn't really know much about this Peter Thiel guy, so that makes me I have no hope.
Yeah, amazing debate and amazing.
I have no optimism for this candidacy of J.D. Vance now, knowing that's really unfortunate. And what's also unfortunate about this whole situation is similarly to the Missouri Senate race, it doesn't really seem like any super progressive or socialist minded candidate is going to get in the race. We were talking about or kind of hoping that maybe Nina Turner would, turn gears and throw her hat in this ring. But right now it looks like the Democrats are lining up behind Tim Ryan, which is just not exciting to me at all. That guy is totally fucking milquetoast.
I can't even keep a straight face when I'm thinking about that.
Dude, I know. He really
I'm just thinking about that. Like, oh my god, like you just said, like the Democrats are gearing up behind Tim Ryan. I'm just like, what a fucking pathetic strategy, dude. Like,
I know. And then they're gonna turn around and then cry about how they lost the Senate when it's like you didn't even try to win these seats. You're gonna nominate Tim Ryan and some.
They don't want to win the seats though. They don't want to do what it takes to win the seats. I'll tell you that way, right? They want to win the seats with their milquetoast fucking bullshit neoliberal messaging. No,
they don't even
happen. It's never gonna happen. But they don't want to win doing what? Yeah,
they didn't even lose. They wish they would have lost the Georgia Senate races, because now Biden actually has to make up excuses like a parliamentarian for why he can't do shit. Like they'd much rather send Tim Ryan to his suicide essentially, and against some fucking Peter Thiel backed motherfucker. Like
it's
I don't
Thiel,
know,
but
Peter Thiel. But anyway.
The one more point about Peter Thiel, if you want to watch him fall flat on his face, because this guy's like, he made a bunch of money from PayPal and Facebook, and I'm surprised you don't know about who this guy is. He's like a whale of Silicon Valley. He's like one of the richest guys in the world.
I've heard of him. There's a bunch of people that seemingly made a bunch of money from PayPal and then did a bunch of shit.
Yeah, Elon Musk. Yeah, well, but he has this amazing debate where he gets completely pulverized by David Graeber. And someday we'll do like a full ass reaction to it, because it's totally worth it. Rest in peace, David Graeber, one of my all-time favorite intellectual hero or greatest intellectual heroes. But anyway, they had this debate where the premise was this: why aren't we living in the future that they both dreamed of when they were kids? So when they were kids, like all their parents told them about, when I was a boy, we were only dreaming about submarines, and now we have submarines. And when I was a boy, we were dreaming about going to space, and then we went to space, and they were like, why the fuck did that happen? and David Graeber was like, there wasn't any kind of financial incentive to send people to the moon anymore. There was no financial incentive to go to Mars. There was financial incentive to keep people glued to the screen and sell them shit. And that's what we became damn good at. And then Peter Thiel was like arguing, that we'd been constraining capitalist innovation and like all this kind of horseshit. He basically gets like fucking it's like when Jordan Peterson debated Zizek. It's like an intellectual trouncing. But anyway, that's what I always think of whenever I think of Peter Thiel.
I'll have to check that out, but for sure, it's just disappointing that the Democrats aren't going to really run someone who's going to be capable of winning the seat, barring some miracle. Again, the other senator from Ohio is Sherrod Brown, who has his faults, but is actually a fairly strong Democrat in the scheme of things. He's
as far as the Senate goes, for sure.
Yeah, he's fairly populist when it comes to labor and economics. So, it is possible for a Democrat to win in the state of Ohio, despite the fact that it's been trending red, and it's not going to be Tim Ryan that does the job. Again, if you want any reminder of his politics, just watch one of the debates from the presidential primary. It was pathetic. He got trounced multiple times by a couple different. Tulsi got him at one point. It was pretty brutal. He was not impressive, and it's funny that he thinks he can like somehow turn his personality into a more successful political entity because he really is not inspiring. But
it just makes me laugh that he reaches for the stars though, right? Like he really like, say what you will about Tim Ryan, he like believes in himself for whatever fucking reason. Like he's up there like he thinks he's on fire. He thinks he's like fucking killing it, and he's like waving his hands and like trying to like get into it and talk really, but it's just like fucking like. It's just like applesauce coming out of your mouth. Just I don't care what you're saying. There's nothing.
That recent Senate speech where he was railing at Republicans, like the substance of that was pretty on point, but it was so obviously performative. It was so obviously just trying to raise his profile and get in the news because he's going to run for the Senate seat. Like, dude, where was that energy when you were running for fucking president? Like, why weren't you out there doing that shit on the debate stage, talking about minimum wage and shit like that? Like, you had an opportunity.
Yeah, or why weren't you doing that about minimum wage when they took it out of the fucking bill? Like, you know what I mean?
Exactly. Again, it's easy to point to Republicans complaining about cancel culture and be like, why are they obstructing? Which they are. That's their nature, and it's fucked up and unacceptable. But again, I don't really see him taking on the Democrats a lot, except for ironically when he briefly floated a run against Pelosi, funny enough, for the Speaker of the House in I believe 2018. No one remembers that, but he very briefly floated a challenge to Nancy Pelosi in 2018 for Speaker, and then like basically was told to like fuck off by Democratic leadership. So he just meekly.
Holy shit! You're right. I'm looking at a CNBC. Let me link this to you so you can pull it up really quick.
Okay.
This is fucking crazy. I didn't know this.
Yeah, but you're right that he shoots for the stars.
He believes in himself for whatever reason. It was really clear when he was running for president, and he would have like 0.1% in the polling, and then like he would still like be putting out videos. It's like with your help, we can do this. Just like, oh my, like I don't have I would never run for president, but if I did, I mean, I would never run for president. I don't even want to speculate what I would do if I was running for president because it's such a fucking impossibility. It's such an ego fest. I would hate myself for all the ego-driven things that you would have to do to fucking run for president. But that's the thing. He loves all those ego-driven things that you would have to do to become president, and he was shameless about them, even when he had absolutely no public support. Same with this. Apparently, Ohio Democrat Tim Ryan might challenge Nancy Pelosi for Speaker. This is from 2018, so obviously old news. Don't want to alarm anybody just coming in. But that is fucking hilarious because there was no chance in hell that would ever fucking happen.
No. And it's funny because he didn't even really mount a challenge. He floated this idea, but then basically, like I said, he was told to fuck off and then just did. Like he did. He didn't make a case about why Pelosi shouldn't be the speaker anymore. He was just like, maybe it should be me. And then he was like, oh, never mind. So not really a very inspiring politician. And again, going back to that moment the other day on the Senate floor when he was waving his hands and going crazy, like you literally had a national spotlight multiple times on a debate stage. Right? Why weren't you doing that when you were on TV? Why weren't you waving your hands around, screaming about all the things that are going on instead of just running an incredibly milquetoast campaign that basically stood for nothing?
Yeah, I mean, It's so weird, right? Because I think if you've been in politics for a while and you have an obscene love for yourself, and you're just so egotistical and maniacal, and you believe in yourself just as stupidly as somebody like Tim Ryan does. I think he just was convinced, like, oh, if I'll just read the lines, and I'll read the lines better than everyone else, and I'll get all these corporate dollars because everybody's going to love me, because why wouldn't they? I'm saying all the right things. This is what's been, tested. This is what everybody tells me is the line. I'm following the line. Why isn't it working? He seems like a guy that actually really believes that would work out, and then be genuinely shocked when he gets like 0% of the support, and be like, what the hell happened? Like, what's wrong? Like, what's wrong with the world? Like, they don't want decency and middle, like, and whatever, the kind of shit. Like, that's the vibe I get.
And he was one of those, like one of multiple Democrats that was in the 2020 primary. And it was just like, why are you even here? Like, out of all of the candidates running, all of like the fresh faces that the media was trying to hype up. And, admittedly, there was, an unprecedented amount of diversity and all that. But then you have motherfuckers like Tim Ryan that are just there. And you're like, what do you think you're adding to this? Again, he wasn't really standing for anything. He didn't have like a signature policy that he was running on. So it's like, it becomes very obvious that it really is just a profile boost for a lot of people in a way.
Yeah, he wanted to sell books.
Yeah, and I mean, admittedly, neither of us would even know who the fuck he was if it weren't for that. So, I mean, mission successful in that sense. And that's the case for so many presidential campaigns these days. They're really just springboards to have a national profile. That's what Tulsi Gabbard definitely unequivocally did. No doubt in my mind, that was the whole entire point of her presidential run. Sorry. But, it happened. Multiple people have done that. They want to, springboard themselves into a media career, or just be someone that people pay attention to. And a good way to do that is to get on the debate stage and cause a ruckus, or not cause a ruckus if you're Tim Ryan. But